Hello guys, welcome back to Feedback Friday. Today we're going to jump straight into it. We're looking at a piece here from Will. This is an old metal a sermon. I don't know if what the exact intention behind this model is, if it's just for gaming or if he's trying to push it to a display level, but there's a few things I definitely see that we can work to improve a little on. Oh, it's just for fun. Okay. Yeah, so a couple things that stand out to me, first of all, is some materials. Okay, so we've got a few different white materials here. We've got this sort of, this white in his crest. Right, we've got the sort of like creamy white cloth. Then we have kind of this bone, this wraith bone sort of stuff here, and down here, and this, and this. So one of the questions I would have for you, Will, is this and this in the face all supposed to be wraith bone, or is some of it supposed to be like a gold metallic and some supposed to be wraith bone? I asked because right now they feel a little too similar to me, if one is supposed to be metallic and the other is supposed to be wraith bone. So material separation here, like, is this also supposed to be okay? They're painted all as the same material. Okay, then that is fine. All right, so one thing I would consider is this and this feels kind of the same, so I might think to switch. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to try and give a little more volume to the crest here by changing the, not too blue, I want it sort of more neutral gray, or you could even go with like a slightly warm gray, to not make it too similar to the steel. But I would try and introduce a little bit of shadow here on like the side of the crest in order to make the distinction between like the tops and sides just a little different. So we can do something like this to give some more shape and shadow to the crest. And then you can come back and like re-highlight some of the strands if you want to try and create some form like that to give it a little bit of that texture back. Hello, Ellison, how are you? So that's one thing to do here. The next would probably be to take a similar tone like that. This sort of like warm gray, something like this, or maybe even cool it off this time, something like this. And then we're going to take and give a little bit of highlight to the black part on top, right? So this will give a little more light and shape to the top of the mohawk crest. Things are good. Right, so we can give just a bit of shape and highlight to these guys. The next is here. I would push the highlight on this a little bit more, so we can give a little to make some of his armor appear a little more shiny. Right, we can try and push that light on his helmet just a bit more. This is going to draw a little more focus, right? Give him a little shine, you know? So we could push some of these parts and use some edge highlights on the helmet in a few places in order to make this like a nice shiny material, you know? And it's going to help draw some attention towards the face. You could do the same on some of the armor here, like if you wanted to make some of this just a bit shinier. So it's not edge highlighting the whole thing, but you pick out a couple of edges to like emphasize in order to, yeah, draw that attention where you want. Even doing this to the face a little bit more. Just pushing that just a bit further will help pull that attention, you know? Now, the cloth, right? In order to help balance this sort of white here with this white here and separate the cloth from the base, because the base and the cloth I feel like have a very similar sort of brownish tone. I would actually consider changing the cloth to a more neutral gray. So this will help create some separation with the base here, right? Something along these lines. So you could see now I'm glad you like the paint. Thanks Megan. Hi McFerrin. Welcome in. So if we look now at the difference, you know, like this helps this stand out a little bit more from the base, right? And then we could come in and just create a little, like, you don't want to go too dark with a white, but we could maybe push some of the shadow just a tiny bit more in a few spots in order to give it a little bit more contrast. Hi, Roxana. Okay. So this will help separate, yeah, the cloth from all this bone color and separate it from the base a bit more. What up, Ethan? The other thing I would consider is this red. So we want to take this really saturated red here and on some of the soul stones. Try and pick out that bottom edge just a little bit more. Just give them just a bit more shine. Even dipping into like not like a orange, but like this sort of reddish orange color. We can create just a slight, even like this slightly salmony color. We can create just a little bit more highlight here. You can use this sort of color too if you want to like add some warmth around the main highlight of the helmet. So without going crazy, because I know it's just this is a for fun piece, but I think with those few things we'll create a little more interest and a little more attention, a little more separation, you know. Another thing to consider is, I think he's wearing gloves, yeah. Might want to try and create just the hands is a big thing for me on miniatures. The hands are pretty important. I know some of this detail is like lost. So if he's wearing gloves, you might want to try and come in and just draw in the like segmentation of the hands a little more. And then just like we did here with the armor, you can come in and try and create a bit more highlights on the hands, because they're another focal point, you know. All right. A nice highlight on the black too would look good. So here you got the black. Try and line this really well. Get that super sharp, right? You don't need one on the white because it's basically pure white, but this black section of the yin yang, you can come in and try and catch a little edge highlight on that top edge there, just to give it some a little bit more separation and make it look extra sharp and like popping off his chest a little bit more. All right, cool. Okay. Sukadong asked about this one. I'm going to skip the NMM one. I've talked about NMM so much. He was asking about doing a dappled light on this piece. So, dappled lighting is difficult, to say the least. You really need to have separated values. So right now I'm not getting the sense of dappled lighting. So a thing with dappled lighting, if you're not aware, it's basically like the light that comes in through trees and stuff. Well, if we think about how like trees would work, right? Let's try and draw some branches here. So if we think about like how the branch would work, you have the branch or the tree, right? Like this. And then you have smaller branches that come off this, right? And then you get all these leaves and things that are on the tree. So you have tons of leaves and things. All over this, right? And when these leaves and things start to layer together, the light passes through the leaves and starts to create a lighting, this dappled pattern. So if we think about it in the negative space, right? We're drawing the light in between the leaves. And that light is important that we have little islands of light, not islands of shadow. Okay, so what do I mean by that? Well, if the leaves are casting the shadows, okay, what happens? We can't have a shadow, so we can't have an area of light. Like if I'm going to have the light go through this, right? The light is passing through these leaves and casting a shadow on the background back here. We cannot, I'm going to take like a dark color like this to use as the shadow, right? We can't have just an island of shadow existing like this. So it can't be like, oh, well, there's all these shadows that connect together, right? Because we're creating a drawing of the tree. You can't have little islands of shadow like this because this doesn't connect anywhere to the main branch, right? Branches just don't float in space, okay? So really you're painting the light that's in between these areas here, right? Okay, does that make sense to you guys? All right, so no floating shadows, okay? All the shadows need to connect with each other. Now, sometimes you'll have the branch, and the branch might be like, because the shadow is fuzzy, right? It's slightly blurred. If the connection might not be super obvious, but you don't just have like, I can't just take this color and then right here just put like a cast shadow in the middle of his head, right? Because there's nothing connecting this to the rest of the shadow, okay? So the second thing is that the light, right? So we need to think about, well, one, I don't know what color this dragon is supposed to be, all right? Hello, everyone. Okay, so I cannot look at this right now. And because I have purple over here, right? This is like this dark bluish purple gray kind of color. It's dark indigo blue, right? So I've got this, and then I've got orange, and I've got yellow, right? So what color is the dragon? What's the local color of the dragon? I don't have anything giving me context to know what color the dragon is, right? Or lizard, whatever it is. Okay, so is it just like a brown? Is it, right? If it's a metallic dragon, man, all of this changes. Like this gets way different, right? Like, so let's consider that the light is, this branch is casting, but it's much bigger and it's casting light on him. Okay. Well, what's this big shadow coming from? Right? Is there a whole tree here? Okay, this side of his head is in shadow. That's fine. But where are these super deep shadows coming from? You know? So we have to simplify first. All right. Let's take and make the dragon, I don't know. Let's say he's like a orangish color. All right. Something like this. Sure, we can make it more cold in the shadows. But we need to block in the overall shapes of the light, right? So something like this side of the dragon is in shadow. What are you going to do all down here? Right, so this now becomes my shadow tone, my general shadow tone, okay? This is the same as dappled light, cast shadows, normal shadows, they're all shadows, okay? So you have a value for the shadows, right? There's nothing different about dappled light and cast shadows and normal volumetric shadows. They're all the same. They're all just the absence of light, okay? This is why people are trying to overcomplicate this, right? It's like, it's either light or it's shadow, right? Where does it hit? Okay, yes, you have midtones in between, but generally you can think of like the shape and volume as either light or shadow, all right? Now let's take a lighter value, okay? Something like this. Let's assume that this is the light, right? And the light is coming in through the trees, and we're creating a large section of light. So all of this would be in light, parts of his face, okay? Right, so we're overdoing some of the shadows right now because all of the top of his head here would be in light, right? And then the light starts to fade as it runs down and around the volume to the backside. Okay, so basically all this would be light, right? So we create a much more general light and shadow form, all right? We're simplifying. Depends on the angle. If it's coming in from the top right, yeah, maybe some of this down here, right, would be more in shadow, but whatever. The point is, like, yeah, we have to simplify the overall shape more, okay? So all this guy is in light, all right? So for where is the dappled light hitting, where is it not hitting, this is part of the thing you have to plan here. Like if there's more, are we going to do less dapple on his face in order to make his face more clear? Another issue is that he's got so much texture on him, so like we don't want to confuse texture with lighting, right? Like, or scales with lighting. Generally, this sort of effect is easier on a figure that has less texture than this, right? We're not trying to do so many things at the same time. Okay. So we get this big overall shape. Now we can come back with the shadows, and then we create this tree, and this tree is this branch here that's going to come up like this and wrap over his head, and there's another branch here, right? And maybe there's another branch going this way or something, right? And we can start to plan this out, and then we get these blurry shapes of leaves coming off like this, and maybe there's another one this way. Okay. So we can plan it this way, or you can do it the opposite way. It might be easier to do it the opposite way because there's way more leaves, right? So maybe I take and paint maybe I do this and I go, all right, this is where the big shadow form is going to be casting, and then I come back with this and I start to break this up and create these islands, big, medium, small. Okay, big, medium, small is a generally good practice to consider when doing lighting, like when doing any sort of patterning. All right, so you have big shape, medium shape, small shape. Okay, so I start to do stuff like this, right? And I'm creating these little islands of light that it's passing through the trees, right? Big, right? And then I can blur as they blur together. Sometimes I can combine some of them to make one larger shape and break the edge here, right? Maybe there's a big, medium, small shape like this. So it begins to like dapple this light, right, across his neck. As I combine these different size shapes with each other to create. Now, the light doesn't ever reach underneath his neck here. Maybe it reaches a little bit here. Okay, and then I can always push this out and start to create some more shadow out in these parts where the leaves have now started to dissipate, and it's crossing from a larger shadow form into a much smaller shadow form, right? And then the light gets even bright, so then I start painting highlights, and those highlights, they're only going to show up, right? So maybe I have a highlight here and a highlight here on his face, highlight here, and then some of those lights might highlight inside of these, so we create this more blur. Is it ever hard to cover higher level techniques or ideas? Yes. This is not the easiest thing to like try and explain in a short amount of time. But basically, like, you just have to think like, okay, is it light or shadow? Now, you're going to have in the center area, right, as the branches start to move outwards and away, right, what's going to happen? Anyone? No, the edges don't necessarily soften. What happens is that you get, because how hard the edges on a shadow like this is based on distance from the object. Okay, so the closer an object is to something, the more blurry the shadow is, or the less blurry the shadow is, the sharper it is. So, like, go stand outside and your legs will cast a much sharper shadow than like a light pole will, because your legs are much closer to the ground. Okay. Right. Because that thing's way taller than you. Or leaves aren't going to cast as sharp as a shadow because they're higher in the air as opposed to the things that are like right next to the ground. So all of it's going to be like roughly the same level of blurriness. But what happens is we get further away from the center of the tree branch here, is that the shadows are going to become, you're going to get larger sections of light because you're having less little leaves and things connecting. So bigger areas of light here, and then denser areas of shadows in the middle where you have more and more branches, like more branches and more leaves overlapping. Okay? Not islands of shadow. No, because you don't want little islands, but you get more little clumps, right? All these shadows, they have to connect, but you get more little, what's a peninsulas, I guess, right? You think of it like a fractal, right? You know, like a snowflake is a fractal, right? As it gets towards the ends, you have higher density of lines towards the center and lower density towards the outside, right? So you get more light and then more dense shadow in the middle. Which brushes do you use? Been trying to practice. Dude, I literally just use the like default flat brush in painting. That's it. Would you also build in the trunk? No, I mean, dude, is that like, that's all further questions. I'm not even sure I would paint it this way, right? It's like, you have to think about how, like, what look you're going for, right? And a lot of times with this sort of effect, you know, like something you want to consider is that you're not literally trying to paint a tree, right? you're trying to represent the idea of light passing through a tree and then how you achieve that, right? One of my favorite examples, let's see if we can find it. John Chan Spira, no. This one. Okay, so as you can see, we have the cast shadows, right? The cast shadows combine with the other shadows, but the shadows of the dappled light are not as intense. So it's like, he's not literally drawing a tree here, right? He's drawing the impression of a tree, right? It's the impression of light passing through a tree creating light on the character. Now, I don't think this is necessarily like the perfect example. I hope John doesn't mind, but like quickly, if I was to make some slight alterations to his paint job, I would probably try and match these values a little bit more, assuming that there's, like, I probably would have gone slightly darker where like on his chest here, there's like a large area of shadow here. So I would probably try and create a bit more consistent with the value of the form shadow here, right? The form shadow and the cast shadow has a value. So I probably would try and create something a little closer like that. Where it's dense and thick, because it's like there's no light passing through getting through that thicker section of shadow, right? But I think he did a good job on the hat. But just on the shirt here, I think it's ever so slightly off. Okay. Anyways, you guys get the idea, right? Hessa. Turtle. Okay. What else I have to say? They're fairly new to the hobby, and this is my first bigger mini. Played around with patterns, etc. Also in doubt what to do with the shadow side. I think it's generally pretty good. I think some of your values might be a little off based on the light side. And I'll show you what I mean. Let's look. So we have that photo already. Let's look at this photo. 2. Okay, so I like the shell is quite good. I think the pattern on the stone club is pretty good. Is it? There's something weird going on. Yeah, the grain's not right. Oh, this is super nerdy. I'll explain it if you guys want. Okay, sorry. I got stuck in a my brain, the woodworker in me didn't know. All right, I'll explain. So let's look at this tree. Let's look at this wood here. Okay, this big knot coming out of the side. What would this represent? Okay, it represents a branch. All right. Cool. So, if that's a branch, right? If this is a branch coming out of it, this would be the trunk, right? Okay, so if this is the trunk and this is a branch coming out of the trunk, what direction? Yeah, the grain would run this way. And you really wouldn't see, you would actually see rings, okay, assuming this is then carved, all right? Wood does, so what we would have is something like rings like this. Make sure I'm on a new layer. All right, so rings would run this way. And then you, as it starts to wrap around, the rings would go like this. So in wood, if we look at a log, let's look at a log that's been turned. You have edge grain, face grain, and end grain. So you can see there the grain, right? But look at how a log that's been had its bark removed really looks. So this is, but that's the bark, right? That's where the bark has been carved away. You're not really seeing the grain. It's not so much grain. Trying to find a good picture. They're all like turned. They're all turned. Wood lumber. I'm trying to find a nice piece of round lumber for like a log cabin or something, you know. Is this a good picture? There we go. So look at how like weird and wavy parts of it look, right? So sometimes in parts, you're going to get wood that runs really lengthwise, but what's happening is because the wood is irregular and it's been turned, right? You get this, it's not so perfectly straight up and down. You get this like these wavy patterns. This is why when you see like, if you know how they make, not laminate, but what's the word? Geez, in my brain. Veneer. right? So if you see the way they make veneer, veneer is like carved. They carve like thin strips off of it. So there's like a saw that rolls this piece of wood, right? This log, and it cuts off like little sheets of it at a time. A baseball bat would be a good thing to look. Yeah, let's look at a baseball bat. That's much smaller, right? But a good example. Baseball bat's also like just a part of lumber. It's not like it's taken right from the center of a tree. I'm not going to get a good enough picture here. Anyways. Hey, you can kind of see it. So here it runs like super straight, but this is taken from a very small, like, piece of wood. Okay? So my point is basically is you're going to have a much more irregular pattern than just like straight up and down. Okay? You're going to have sections where it's more wavy and random, like in the middle, and then you're going to have sections where it's more straight, because as the wood turns over, you get all these different parts, right? So this is a little too perfect. For the type of wood that it is. And then as it gets, because it's this like tapered like this, what's going to happen a lot, I'm going to turn this off. And I'm going to take like this lighter color so we can really see it on there. What often happens is the grain is going to, you're going to see the ring. So, and then it's going to do like this, right? As it starts to taper and you get these like long shapes like this. As it's revealing the ring, because here we imagine the cross section, you get the lines like this. And now these lines become the parts of the ring that go this way. Right? So this comes up and then it connects up here and then it would be cut across like this. And then you see the shape like that. This is super freaking nerdy. But yeah, learning to read the grain on wood, I guess, is a thing. Hey, Noah. All that's to say, just look at reference, guys. Like, don't try and paint it the way you think it should look. Go look at a log, right? Go find a picture of a log or whatever and paint what you see, right? You will get a much better result in the end. Than if you try and just make it up. Okay? Not that this doesn't look like wood, because it does. It's what you expect. Dude, el tío Nedal. It's perfect. Speaking of Albert earlier. Hi, Albert. We were talking about Tacoma earlier. Okay. So, now, the next thing, let's look at the other thing I wanted to show you was on the back here. Okay, so you're saying you're having some struggles with the shadow side. I think the shadow side mostly works, but there's one issue I saw. If we look at the value, okay, so how light or dark certain things are from the back side, let's look at these spots. Okay, and let's turn it black and white so we can see it just in value. Okay. All right. How much brighter are the spots than his skin, or than his, yeah, I guess skin. Reptiles have skin, right? No, I'm not El Cagadillo. Okay. Can you see what's way brighter? Yeah? The spots or the skin? The spots are significantly brighter, right? But if we come back to this one and do the same thing, well, on the hand, they're not so bad, but some of them aren't. And on the head, they're not quite bright enough. So what's happened is we're not transitioning the spots well enough from light to shadow. So what we need to do is we need to increase the light on some of these spots to like a near white so that they read as like having the same value differentiation from the light side to the shadow side, right? So all these little spots in the light need to be much brighter, right? Not saying they need to be pure white like this, but they need to match the change in value from light side to shadow side. Right? Just being consistent. That's where people get tripped up, I think, the most, is they lose the values across from light to shadows, right? So you're losing the fact that, like, yeah, this is so much, this is so much brighter than his skin. So on the opposite, when we're in the lights, they also need to be much brighter than his skin. Okay. Other than that, you're doing fine. Yeah, it's looking good. It's looking good. Okay. Just try and be cautious of that stuff, right? That probably means the same for like his finger nails, claws. I don't know. Tortoises have fingernails, I guess. Right? Be consistent with the value hierarchy. All right. Who's next? Rude. Hey Eric, I finished this bust today and would love your feedback on it. I think the tattoo could have been cleaner, but this is the best I could do after a lot of back and forth. Any tips and advice are welcome. Okay. All right, one thing stood out to me immediately. So you know we were talking about big, medium, small with the dappled lighting? Okay. The same is true for weathering. Okay. If you want to make more natural looking weathering, just believe in the big, medium, small principle. All right. Then the other principle with weathering is edges tend to get, like raised surfaces tend to get weathered faster than flat or recessed surfaces. That depends. If you're talking about damage to the surface, like in this case, right? Damage to the surface is going to be on the edges, where dirt and rust and stuff is going to gather most in the recesses. Right? Does that make sense? Did I say that right? Damage on the edge, dirt and rust in the recesses. Yes? Makes sense? The big, medium, small principle. Big, medium, small is a design principle if you want to make things feel more randomized, and just try and stick to doing big shapes, medium shapes, small shapes. It feels more natural. Okay. Here we just have a lot of the same shapes, right? A lot of dots and things are all sort of spread out evenly. We don't have. So what I would say is taking something like this, and we want to probably reduce some of the texture in the middle here. So that we can focus more texture and damage on the edges, right? So like this big slash there doesn't really make sense, right? This area is kind of protected by his shoulder. Okay, so the most exposed edges are like here, these sort of shapes here, right? So here is where we can go, right? A little bigger. So big shape, medium shape, small shape, big, medium shape, big shape, small shape, right? Big shape, medium shape, small shape, big shape, yeah, medium shape, small shape. Okay. And then let's give it some edge so you can see the edge more clearly. Well, something like this, right? So we get a more natural weathering pattern. And then, you know, when you get... Also, when you do scratches, there's some superficial scratches and stuff, which is nice. Then you can also, like, if this is exposed metal, right, then you can come in with, like, these sort of silvery tones or whatever and create some edge highlights and stuff. That maybe this has been scratched out again, and then you get, you know, some exposed bare metal underneath. So it's, like, started to rust, and then it gets exposed again, rubbed off, and it gets shiny, you know. Okay, tattoo, real fast. All right. So, tattoos are under the skin, okay? So if you want to make a tattoo feel natural, you're going to have the highlight on the chest here. You need to bury the tattoo a little bit. So the longer the tattoo has been, the longer he's had it, the more it starts to fade away, right? Because it's under the skin, right? Black tattoos don't stay black very long. Right, so you can just I mean, if you want to watch me paint tattoos, go watch the video of me painting the MMA fighter where I really go over tattoos. But then on top of that, let's say the skin is slightly oily or sweaty, right? Well, you're going to have a highlight on the chest, and the highlight might go somewhere in the middle here, right? Like this. But the highlight is on the surface of the skin, right? Highlights are reflections. They exist on the surface, right? That's a bit exaggerated, you know, but for the here, let's really exaggerate it. Like he's going to have, let's say man, his chest is so shiny. I'll tone it back here. Right? So if his chest has a big old shine on it like that, right? Let's tone it down now. Okay. You can see that it also starts to fade away the tattoo, right? Because the reflection of the light on his chest is on top of the tattoo, right? It's on top of the skin. It's on top of the tattoo. It's the light reflecting off the oil of his skin, which is the highest layer, okay? So the highlights on tattoos, they exist on top. I don't have any tattoos. Okay, does that make sense? Like, right? That the highlight is a separate thing? Yeah? Okay. Other than that, like, yeah, I mean, this is pretty good. Probably the teeth are a bit too white. Like, this is way too much weathering, dude. Then there's some weirdness with the... I don't really get, like, a good sense of highlight on the face so much. I would expect, like, some sort of highlighting here. Okay, you have oil in your skin. The oil catches highlights. I would expect to see some sort of highlighting on his cheeks or whatever. Yeah, the teeth are like, need some lips. His lips, your lips are moist, wet. You would get some highlight on the lips and things. So one day, I was talking with Arno actually while I was in Vegas, and we were talking about classes and teaching and stuff. One day I'm gonna teach a class or something, design a class or workshop or whatever about like really understanding like material science, I guess, or material, like how to read materials, you know, like understanding like that each material has like a level of gloss, each material, you know, from matte to gloss, from how reflective they are, right? If you want to like nerd out, you can go look up like albedo, right? Albedo. Specular. These are two different things. Speaking of the workshop figure, McFerrin. Hi Eric, I finally took the time to finish this piece after the workshop you gave in Montreal back in October. Thanks again. I had great memories of it. I apologize because I know you've already given a lot of feedback on this model. However, as I'm nearing the end of the project, I was wondering if you had any final adjustments or you could make more general critiques I could incorporate into my future work. I spent a lot of time working on the skin, especially the face. This is my first time trying to take photos, but the shadows are darker and the colors are more desaturated than in reality. Okay. Let's take a look. Well, first of all, it's very good. Someone had some good guidance, huh? What an advertisement for my workshop. No, it's really strong. If I was to notice, if there's like a few things, couple little things here and there. So one thing would be, I think you could put just a little bit more light on his neck, particularly in these couple of spots right here. Like make that cast shadow of the sword hilt a little more obvious. And yeah, just push that light just a tiny bit more. The hand veins are quite good. The other thing is the hands. They're a little too nice. What I mean by that is they're like too smooth, you know? Yeah, my guy moisturizes. Okay, so I'm gonna put my hand under the camera. Right? Like, can you see the little lines in my knuckles and stuff? Right? Or the lines here, you know, he's like, we can paint these. Right? Here, my knuckles are quite reddish. Okay? You can notice my fingertips tend to be quite a bit more red also. All right? So, same with like my palm here, you know, I get little wrinkles and stuff. So this is an opportunity, and the figure is intentionally sculpted in a way that you can add these things, right? Okay, so the sculpt is intentionally sculpted a bit smooth so that you get to paint these surface details, right? So what I want is like we take a little bit of more reddish tone, something like this that's quite saturated, right? This sort of salmony, rosy, reddish tone, and really small. We can introduce some of these like micro details. So these are like little brush strokes. Let me set this to a multiplier color. Yeah, that'll work. Okay. So these little bitty details that are going to change the model a little, right? So you just, instead of trying to blend this out perfectly, you paint some of these brush strokes and you just let them be there. Right? Things like, you know, on here, right? Like, and then you can take just be more red. You can add a little more discoloration around the knuckles and stuff. Okay, the knuckles and the fingers should be a bit more discolored than the rest of the hand. All right, so don't try and be too perfect, you know? I feel like you're trying to be a little too perfect. Then you can come back and here with a more sort of brownish color like this, right? We can introduce some of the lines and wrinkles on his palm and stuff like that. These are super micro details. I'll show you guys on mine. Okay. So you can see that there's definitely like, get rid of some of this sprues. Okay. So you can see that there's like a especially on this hand, right? The coloration of the fingers change, right? I think it's quite obvious up here. And then when we really zoom in, yeah. So I choose to not make, like, intentionally leaving the brush strokes makes his hands rough, right? You can see the wrinkles like on the palm. Okay. The lines in the this part of his fingers, right? So at times you don't want to be so smooth. They're not really things you notice like here at this distance, but when you look at it like super, super close up, that's when you start to see it. Okay? And that's all part of the storytelling of the figure. These intentional choices we make, right? One other little thing. Well, this will be super hard, but I think his eye shape might be ever so slightly too small. Here, how do I draw it? This, right? This distance, the eye should be about half the width. So all right, so this should take up about half that distance. Here, I can do it. I can show you on myself. Right? If I look straight forward, it's hard to tell. But if I look, where do I need to look to the side? There. Now you should see that the iris is like touching one edge, and the other edge of the iris should be like right in the center of my eye. Yes? All right. Proportions. Now, you can change that depending on the character. If you want to make someone feel more childlike or innocent, maybe you make them the iris is a little bigger. If you want to make a character look kind of evil, like orcs, I like to paint them a little smaller, right? Make them a little more beady-eyed and crazy looking. Because, like if you open your eyes up, the irises are going to be smaller in proportion, but that's kind of up to you. Okay. All right. Real quick, I'm going to take a quick little break, and then when I come back, we'll talk about Sugar's Den. Okay? So, be right back. All right. Sugar's Den. Hey, Eric. It's been a while since I had time to paint this. I haven't posted anything here, but I'm working on this bust recently. I stumbled across the problem, which I don't know how to tackle. The hair on this model is such a mess. Here we go. And I don't know how to tackle them without turning them into spaghetti noodles. The spaghetti hair problem. I tried the more volumetric approach, treating all the hairs as a general volume and highlighting them as they flow, but I feel it's still lacking some depth. I think I still need to darken the shadow area, but since the whole figure is not that spotlight lit, there aren't that dark shadows on the back anyways. Please help me fix the hair. Okay. Let's look at the back also, because it's a little more easy to see. The spaghetti hair problem. All right, so, well, first of all, I can look at the lighting and tell you that, yes, we have some lighting direction coming slightly this way, right? Because based on the shadows of the face, right, we know that we have some top right light. So what you want to do is you want to separate it into chunks, right? So this is a chunk, this is a chunk, this is a chunk, this is a chunk, right? This is a chunk. Okay. That makes sense. So we're treating these as these larger sections of hair. Okay. Now, blonde hair. All right. You have two types of blonde hair. Well, two main types of, two sort of colorations of blonde hair. You have dirty blonde hair like mine, so it's like a light brown. Okay, you can see that it's brown over here with really bright highlights. All right, and then you have like platinum blonde that is like almost white, and it tends to appear kind of grayish in the shadows. All right, so that's like people with like really Nordic blonde hair that's like near white in terms of how light it is. Okay. So this right now, this is too ice yellow. It doesn't feel like blonde hair. It feels like yellow hair. Okay, so we need to pick one of the two directions and either go with like platinum blonde or more brownish blonde. All right. And if we go with more brownish blonde, let's do more brownish blonde because it'll be a little easier to show. All right, we need to create some brownish shadows like this. Okay. So we get some of these like orangish brown shadows, and then we're going to try and, based on what we said, okay, well, just normal. Okay, we're going to think about that these shapes, right, the bottom left side of these shapes, just like the face, these volumes of hair are going to have more of this brown on the side of each. Okay, so right now the whole side of her head, this side of her head, should have way more brown in it. Okay, otherwise it starts to look green. See, when I put the brown next to this yellow shadow color, it looks greenish. All right. So then, well, we move up in color, but let's look at me. Hello. Hi. What color do we see? Do we really see any yellow, right? Or does it go more towards a light brown and then to like a white, right? So what's this sort of more saturated color right in between before it gets to the highlights? Yeah. Well, it's this like slightly more saturated, almost sort of skin tony brown color, right? Sort of color like this. So we interpret the volumes this way. We still haven't added any highlights yet, all right? So no highlights yet. This is just the rough shape and volume of the hair, okay? Then, now, once we've done that, right? Once we've gotten these shapes together, now we can really push into the lights, all right? So we've got light and shadow. Probably could even push some of the shadows a little bit deeper, right? Not into the reds, but into these like dark browns, right? Okay, something along those lines, right? Now we push into the like whites, okay? So that means taking this sort of color here and really like, now we can add a little bit, but we're gonna desaturate and head into the like whitish tones, so these sort of like ivory colors, right? Okay, and now we start, instead of trying to paint we need to think about like the shape of the hair, right? And how the highlights are going to run across the hair, right? They tend to run parallel, right? Or perpendicular to the flow of the hair. So if I do this, right? You can see it's a line that starts here and it goes up and around the dome of my head, right? So it's going up and around, all right? So we're following the rhythm, but we're going to paint the lines in the direction the hair flows, ignoring the fact that like we're not trying to edge highlight here. We're just using the direction that the hair grows to create these lines, or to show the line that we're going to paint, right? And sometimes these lines might go in the recesses, sometimes they might not, right? Sometimes they might go on the edge, but we're just using the shape and flow to give direction to the hair, okay? And they crisscross like this, right? So you do lines like this because the hair isn't perfectly combed straight like that, right? This one, okay? So we're looking at where that hair is going to reflect the light. This is the specular reflection. In fact, it is an anisotropic specular reflection if you want to get nerdy about it. All right, so following the shape, we zigzag back and forth to create that flow, this sort of sawtooth pattern that creates that flow to the hair, right? Okay, so let's look at before and after. Now we can see sort of like where we were and where we get to, right? Biggie Poplar, hello. Okay, then we can do even more if we want. If we want our hair to look really shiny, we can put another highlight even inside that. Okay. Makes sense. So all these lines running the length of her hair, when they combine, they create a shape that follows her hair like that. Okay, follows the hair back like this. Follows the hair like this, like this, like this, like this, like this, right? Make sense? Makes sense. Good. Fallen shots. Hi, Eric. Still working on the skin tones as usual. Any quick general advice would be welcome. Updated pictures below. Is that the updated picture or is there more? It's the updated picture. Okay. And then make sure we come back so I remember what the next one is. The next one is this horsey man from Robin. All right. Okay. Skin tones, color-wise, look all right. Yeah? Highlight placement, not bad. Okay? What I don't quite get is general head shape. We need some general shape to the face. Okay? So, based on the lighting, right, where are we going to get light and shadow? Okay, I have some shadow under her jaw. I have some shadow here, but it's like way under her jaw. I have some shadow under the nose here, and I have some shadow sort of here. This is like the only shadow I have, right? So where the shadow's at, right? There's some shadow here in the neck. Okay. So what I need is maybe not this dark, right? This is a bit too much. But let's take something like this. See how light this value is? Let's bring it down. All right. Okay. So I need something to express the shape of her face here, right? So let's block in some light and shadow, right? So there's some shadow here. There's going to be some shadow under the brow, like, or under the brow like this. Guys, you have shadows under your eyelids, okay? No matter how perfect they are, okay? Well, maybe there's some shadow on the side of her face here, right? Maybe that shadow continues under the mouth, and then it continues under the jaw, all right? So a lot of you wrap your shadows or your lights too far under the jaw. The shadow needs to start a little sooner, right? The shadow of the jaw needs to start sooner. The light can't wrap around underneath it, right? If I hold up something rounded to the camera, okay, right? I put that under the camera, okay? The shadow is in the center, right? Because the light is coming from directly above. If we turn it, you can see that it's on the equator, right? So where is the equator of her jaw, right? The light can't wrap underneath, and the equator, where it would be, this is assuming the light's coming straight from above, but even if it's angled, right, the light is not going to wrap underneath the jaw, okay? That also means that we need some shadow for her lips. Okay. Please stop doing this. Stop making all of your figures look like cats. The Cupid's bow there is not shadowed like that. All right. You have a volume. If you look at the lips, right, it's shaped like this. Okay. And if the light's coming in slightly from this way, this plane will be more shadowed. This one will be in light. This one will be more shadowed. All right. So we need to express those things. Okay. Now that we've got like some actual, maybe a little darker here, under the nose, right? We can create a shadow of the nose there or whatever. Now that we've got some shape, like some actual shape to her head, okay, that means that there's going to be more shadow like this. Okay, now you can start to like blend these together with midtones. All right, so that's when you come back with these, or even this, and we start to create some midtone, and this starts to soften, right? Because this is a rounded volume, and depending on how round it is, right, we have to create a longer gradient for more soft shapes, and shorter gradients for more sharp shapes. Yes? This is rounded here. Even a bit of that might have midtone. Okay. Now you can soften parts if you need, because you don't want it to be so dark or whatever. Now you come in and you start creating highlights. So you have this large highlight on her forehead, but if there's a light reflecting off of her forehead here, we're looking for planes that share that same angle, right? So that means that there might be a highlight here, and the highlight might not run down the center of her nose like this, because if it ran down the center of her nose like this, that means it would run down the center of her forehead here, right? But it's offset. Okay? And if it's offset, that means we have to offset the one on her nose too. So that means this needs to move. Okay. Can you see it? You see the difference? Let's look at the difference. Before, after. And that's without coming in and creating like occlusion shadows and stuff that create even darker sections. Like, we need to express the darker line of the mouth and add more shadows where you have deeper recesses and things. Okay, so we express the general shape of the head more. Do the swirl on the hairline to soften? What? What? The hair's too dark anyways. You don't have this dark line that separates your hair. Okay. You guys see a dark line? Or is it, can you actually see like scalp? No thinning. Get out of here. Got a beautiful, luscious head of hair. Okay, so we need to get rid of this, because this should just not be there. You ain't even going to make me self-conscious, because I know it's not. Okay, then we can take and grab some of the skin color and push it back into the hairline. And then even this part where you've got like highlights, like that might go back into the hair like that. Okay, good. Okay, you're getting lost in texture and detail and stuff. You need to be thinking about general shapes more, right? You guys get lost in the details. Robin, first time posting. I guess the feedback I would like is to know what the weakest and strongest parts of the paint job are. It's the leader of a unit of 3. Where can I improve the most, and what should I lean into more for the future? Check out my tabletop model, guys. This is pretty good. Yeah, okay. All right, mister. I see you. No, this is strong. But what could be better? One thing that I do notice okay, one thing that does stand out to me pretty quickly is, let me get the red so I can circle. Yeah, a lot of the whites read the same, and this is a different color than that. These are not the same. This is like a richer, more creamy color, and this is more of that sort of platinum blonde that I was talking about. So yeah, this is definitely more like on the yellowish sort of creamy side, and this is a bit more platinum. I like this better, to be honest. This is getting a little too gold. So this is good. This reads getting a little too similar to the gold in terms of color. I don't like that there's so much white. Like, this is white, this is white, these are white. So I might try and vary the color there. The non-metallic is quite good. I'm not going to comment too much on the roughness of some of the painting. I mean, the light placement is very good, but it's tabletop, you know, well, tabletop. So I'm not going to like sit here and overly criticize some of the blending on parts, but like parts of the metallics are very good. This is also quite nice, and then somehow it's like the front and back were painted differently, because that reads more rich gold to me than this. So something happened where you lost a bit of this, like this nice color here in some of the metallic. So like I don't have that like warm yellow that I would kind of expect to see based on the other side. So it's losing a bit of that like warmth. You don't need to overdo some of the dark parts on top either. Like, you can let some of this part up here be just like bright. Same with like this, right? If it's facing upward, yeah, even this, like you could probably use to create a downward shape like that. Yeah, so don't lose, make sure you get some of this nice like warm color that you have in these parts on some of these front parts. And for me, the sword is a little weird. I would probably recommend, so, okay, this is a lesson for you guys. We have an S curve here. Yeah? Yes? I'm gonna draw it again. If there is a big old highlight right here on the S curve, at that angle, we're looking for this tangent. Yeah? This is a tangent here. Where else should there be a big old highlight? Correct, Chad. There should be a highlight down here where the tangent matches. Right? So that means this part down here Dude, chat's so smart. You guys are getting, you're learning, learning. Okay. I would actually, honestly, I would probably extend this a little bit, broaden this just a touch. I like a little bigger highlight. Try and avoid some of these like laser highlights, you know. Okay. The same would be true for this reflection, but I honestly am not in love with that. I don't know. It's a little weird. I don't know what it's supposed to be reflecting, but it's cool. I guess it's magical. So whatever. But try and be a little consistent with the highlight placement on the sword. If you want to make it look even more curvy, play with some shapes, right? So instead of this like double tapering like this, which is a bit cartoony, right? It's cool, but you could play with the shape like that. And then you could reverse the shape down here to like emphasize the curve of the blade more. Okay. It's pretty good. And change his pants color. Or don't. I don't know. Whatever. Maybe change them slightly. Maybe make them like a cream color instead. Just like slightly alter them. You can make lots of different color whites. Just by altering like the midtones a little bit. I'd put another, push that highlight on the helmet just a touch more too. All right. The others, yeah. Gerbil Papa. Eric, this one's a split scheme. Oh, that's hard to say. Split scheme showing the same guy in the same environment before and after a fire. Would love some general feedback, hoping to get this guy comp ready. It actually didn't save. It said it didn't, and it actually didn't for once. There it goes. All right, chat. What's the problem? I looked at this one earlier. You're both correct. Okay. Left and right side of the face don't feel like the effect is carrying over. I don't see the split effect on the face at all. And I would say they're not different enough. Yeah. Like if you're going for dirty, needs to be dirty. How you're going to find a like this is the time to look at reference material. I'm not going to sit here and Google a bunch of reference material of firefighters after going into a fire. But yeah, you need to really, like, if you're going to do this effect, push the effect, okay? So for me, like, this is too dirty of a gray. We need more of these, like, brighter, sort of saturated, not necessarily saturated, but a bit brighter tones, right? Like, really carry that effect across, right? But probably what's hurting you is your shadows are too black on the clean side, and it's making it feel dirty when it's not supposed to be. So we need to avoid using too much of just like black tones that are going to muddy the colors here. So push this, right? Like already you can see like just doing that to that, like creating separation. That is very true. That specular highlights will not show up as much on sooty surfaces. Okay, and then pushing this probably even lighter. And soot exists on the surface, right? So when we talked about weathering earlier, right? You can see just how much different now the two sides feel. Like his hat here probably needs to be or helmet, whatever, way more white. Like make him clean. And then the face again, too muddy. Like this is see how gray this is? It's almost just like pure gray, right? So we need some color like in his face, right? I don't want to sit here and paint over the whole model, right? But you get kind of the idea that I'm getting at is like if we want to separate these two halves, we need to create some difference here. I don't know. Storytelling with, yeah. Would he be wearing the mask, I assume? I don't know. Would you still get soot and stuff on your face anyways? I'm not a firefighter expert. Okay, so you're just using too much like black to shadow. Even the orange here, you can see how muddy the orange is, right? If we look at this color, it's so muddy compared to like these, which have more like saturated oranges and stuff to them, right? It's like you just didn't get quite the coverage you needed on this or something. Okay, so lean into it. All right, if you're gonna do this effect, you gotta lean into it. Otherwise, it just looks like one half of his coat is slightly darker than the other. this might be the time to like grab some charcoal, like actual charcoal, not graphite, because charcoal, graphite is shiny and charcoal is not. And like actually use some weathering pigments and stuff to dirty it up. Yeah, like some actual black pigment powder. And dust 1/2 of the model. Hey, Eric. First time for feedback. Recently finished this mini apart from the base. Going forward on to the next one. Can I please have some feedback? Robbed. Little orky boy. The commando knob. This is good. That looks quite good. Mm-hmm. 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 Yeah, this model's awesome. I mean, technique-wise and stuff, it all seems quite good. I think, trying to see what I would really like, go like, oh, you should change this or that. Like, this comes down to like intention and stuff, right? Like, what is the purpose? Like, what are you trying to paint it for Golden Demon or a contest? Or are you just trying to have some cool looking orcs? Because if you just want some cool looking orcs, man, it's good. Like, pfft, yeah. I mean, you forgot to paint the studs on the belt, but pfft, nerd, throw it in the trash. No, I mean, for real though, like, there's really not a whole lot I would sit here and be like, you should do this or that. There's one thing I would say, like, on the non-metallic parts is there may be like a bit too clean. Like, I see you including some of these like browns and stuff. But like the gun barrel and the scope and like this thing, they all feel a bit like on the clean side to me, where this feels more interesting. So maybe trying to change it up a little there. The other thing is I don't like the pants. The brown pants are not working for me. There's too much brown. There's like leather right there. I think what could work really well, I'm just going to do this real quick. Color. And I think switching it to like a nice kind of navy blue might work better. Just create some separation here. And if you don't like navy blue, the navy blue, like we could even go here. We can play with all the different colors. Hold on. So like we could try some different color pants, you know? Maybe yeah, I mean I like the sort of blue gray. Maybe a little less saturated, so it's something similar to the jacket, maybe darker, or maybe just like a black. Right? I think that works. Neutral colors are good. I don't know what they're talking about downstairs. I mean, there's kill team happening, but cool. So something like that. I mean, sorry for not giving you a bunch of crazy amount of feedback, but like, I mean, the model is good, you know, like you don't need to sit here and over nitpick every little thing about it, because there's not a lot to. And yeah, I mean, like the leather and everything is nice, so maybe just try and alter up the metallics a little bit, and yeah, that's about what I would think. And then change the pants so that they don't you know, flow straight into the all the browns that are around it from the leather. Helps distinguish the leather a little more. What would you say? Would you say neutral colors are generally a good idea for models with bright skin colors? I would say neutral colors in general are a good idea when you have a figure that it's got a bunch of colors like this. Honestly, looking at it, I would argue there's maybe too many colors on this model. The only thing that's missing is purple. Right? So you've got blue, red, yellow, or bright green. They're all super bright. Even like this sort of teal green. Basically purple and orange, I guess, are the only ones missing. I would even maybe say like, I don't know, maybe you really wanted to go with blue for some reason, but like just taking out the, I don't know, maybe not a black hat. Maybe, I don't know, maybe a red hat could be cool. It's a little too baseball. Not very sneaky to have a bright red cap, but maybe a nice black cap would look good also. Like sometimes I think just these sort of neutral colors can work better. Now he's a little biker man. Like, yeah, just switching sort of this out like that. Like reduce where we can. I think this works a little better. And if you wanted, you could really like, here, let me do this real quick. We could really like push the black a little more. You could make it like a leather cap. Make it like a bit more shiny. We can darken the pants a little more. Yeah, he's in his full Judas Priest outfit. Breaking the law, breaking the law. Bam, bam. All right. Pop Secret. Hi, Eric. Just a gaming figure for some general feedback this time. I specifically focus on defining the shapes of the body. I've included the game card that was used as reference. Game is Dragon Eclipse. Okay. All right. Big thing I see right up front. Kind of two things. Hold on. Let's go back and look at the reference material. All right. So I think you're kind of overdoing the edge highlighting here. I don't think you need that much edge highlighting. All right. So let's choose to reduce that some. So sometimes this sort of shape, these sort of shapes can be very. Oh my God! I have a terrible cramp in the back of my leg. Hold on. So sometimes I think you can sort of you don't need to like overly complicate these sort of shapes. So let's just reduce that a little bit, right? We're gonna get some light on these scales. Okay. And then like, yeah, these edge highlights, they're a little much. I mean, they don't need to be that much. Them some thick boys. Too thick. Especially as you get lower, like, who cares? You know? It's more important to get the overall shape of these scales first, and then you can add some edge highlights if you need, but let's try and make these a little smaller. So like this, you're losing like the general sort of shape here. In fact, I would say that the dark lining in between the scales is going to be more important for the effect than the actual edge highlights, right? So if we look, like, sort of simplify and soften some of these shapes a little bit, but bring a more overall kind of shape to the body, right? Then on the head, let's really try and Like, push some of these, you know? Make some of these really white. That way we can get the nice overall form of the head. And then same with these doodads, the feathery bits up top. Let's try and define these two halves of the feathers a little bit more. Right? Okay. Hope that's helpful. Try and work on your sharpness a little bit more. It's a pineapple bird. Pineapple something or other. I don't know what the heck he is. What was it actually called? This is a Rhinowed Fipple. Furple. A Rhinowed Furple. Duh. Oh, wow, that looks like a nightmare to paint. Not work. Hey, Eric, I've always watched Feedback Fridays when painting, and I thought I'd finally submit something. Okay, so let's talk about your photograph real quick. It's not bad, but the lighting that you're doing is doing too much work for you. Right? So it makes it a little difficult for me to see some of the light placement because of how like directly overhead your lighting is. Like that's when I'm getting these like super harsh shadows and stuff. Painting wise, it doesn't look bad. This is one jacked crocodile lizard thing. Dude is shredded. He's swolled up. All right, somebody come up with a swole lizard pun. Come on. So yeah. But the lighting is a useful guide here, right? So this is an interesting opportunity to kind of look at Allegainzor. There we go. All right, I like it. The Rockadile. Okay. All right. Okay. Yeah. Chinik, I'll read yours also. So, do you know a good veterinarian because these pythons are sick? Okay. Well, you said that's a snake instead of a lizard, but it's close enough. Okay. Sorry, lost in dumb reptile Puns. Yeah, so anyways, this is a good opportunity to sort of see some of the lighting here. And you can see just how, like, when we look at the lighting, it's going to be hard for me to critique the actual painting, but I want some of you guys to notice, because of this very harsh lighting, which, by the way, in bodybuilding competitions, the lighting is very harsh and directly overhead in order to achieve this exact same effect. Pop Secret, thanks for the tier 1. Appreciate you. Just how, well, let's look at shapes, right? So you can see that the shape of these shadows from the photography are very clearly defined, right? Like the arm here, right? It's like, this is a big shape of shadow right here. And the rest is in light, right? The lats here, it goes like this. And then all of this, right? This continues up and around, and this is all shadow here, except for where these abs stick up, right? Okay, so you need to pay attention. This is not specifically about your painting not work, but everyone's painting in general, is how, like, clear these larger shapes are, right? So we need to define these bigger shapes. These more clearly defined forms, in order to create something that is, like, very readable. Okay, then you start defining details, right? Like here, you don't really see much shadow in these, like, individual muscles of the quad, right? But if we look here, the lighting makes this shape quite clear, and then we might have a shape like that, right? Does this make sense to you guys? Like, I'm able, because of the lighting is so harsh and direct, I'm able to, like, clearly draw, like, the Terminator, right? The lines and forms of the shapes. Okay? So you focus on this first, and then you start to create individual details, right? These smaller shapes and details. But you can see, like, here, right? Like this part of these abs, right? You don't really have shadow in here so much. You have this sort of as all one big shape like this. And then there's a little bit of information, right? The more important one is getting this like big shape, because this is the rib cage, right? Doing the vacuum. Yeah, these bodybuilders today, they don't know how to do a vacuum. They don't know how to suck in the stomach. Hey Eric, I've been focusing on the things you said in my previous feedbacks, and hopefully it's improving my current pieces. I would love your thoughts on this piece, please. Not bad, but could be even more. Okay. So, pretty pretty okay. What I mean by that is I can see now that you're like, look here, right? What's happening to this? It's becoming more pink, right? So this is good from a perspective of like you're beginning to like modulate the color a little, right? So it's not just like all red and then red. It's still very small, but there is like some bit of cooler tones, right? Modulating the color a little here, but it's still one. I think you're still over reliant on black, right? But now consistency is a thing, all right? So everything is still a little too linear, like you're painting in sections instead of thinking of the overall piece, all right? So what I'd like to see is, I like this cold sort of color here in this skin, right? This is nice, but we can do more, right? So let's duplicate this layer, okay? Instead of just shifting that, what if we shift all of the highlights like a little cooler, right? So we play with the color balance and we go to the highlights. And we shift them all just like a bit more blue. Blue cyan sort of color. Right? Across everything. Maybe I need to do midtones. Midtones. Right? Oh, look, if we shift everything a little bit blue. Okay, this is a subtle thing. Right? But if we look, you may not see the difference right away. But if we switch back and forth, right? Yeah, you can see that like these colors, they start to shift cold. And like even this, right? I would shift into like purples like this. You like using these really saturated colors, but like, what if you used like a nice cold, more cold blue, right? This sort of like indigo blue to highlight the purple fabric here, right? Now we're being sort of consistent across the different materials, right? This is a highlight, so it's a reflection of the light source. Well, if one material shifts more cold, right, as we move through the light source, you know how to do it because you do it here with OSL. So just treat your main light source as colored also instead of like a generic white light source, right? So if we shift those purples, like it adds more depth to the color, right? And it starts to add coherency throughout the piece. So like let's quickly just do this. And heck, in this, right? This is like this sort of color here. Let's go more teal like this, right? So now, when we look, right, which one feels like it's part of the scene more? Right, this is too magenta, right? It's too warm. This feels more in the palette. And then I turn this off. You're probably also using like a bit too much neutral gray. Right, this is very neutral gray. It has some color to it, but it's quite neutral. I like the horns too. These are nice. But like, what if we played with the color of the horns also? So now like we can think, yeah, maybe these are like slightly shiny. We can like give them some color, you know? Don't be afraid to use like a nice, like these like sort of sky blues or whatever to create some ambience and stuff. Right? It works. Even I can put straight up sky blue on the gold, and your eyes will read it as like the color that it's supposed to be. Right? As long as the midtones, right? As long as it's mostly yellows and oranges, I can put this blue straight on top of here, right? It might look weird super zoomed in, but when I zoom out like that, this is all to say like, yeah, you can go that way. Okay, so this is an interesting, I was using a pastel peach across most of the colors as a highlighting tone. So this is a bit, I think people get a bit confused with this because they assume that like mixing a specific like color like that will always shift the color in a way. Certain colors, right? Like red, for example. Okay, so if you use pastel peach on this magenta, right? What color is peach? Right? Peach is like a pinky color like this, right? Or maybe it's a magenta color. So it's just going to stay the same. Right? But in terms of red, it's making this purple more warm and it's moving it towards red. Okay? But you have a red already. And by mixing this peachy color, it's making it more cold. Right? So you're moving this way, making it more warm, but on a red, it's actually making it more cold. So if we want to also make the red more warm, well, we might actually need to add like a little bit of orange, okay? Or a little bit of yellow. So it's not about just using one color. Think about it more as temperature. Think about it, yeah. Because light is a spectrum, okay? You're not, most of the time your light, right, is not just one color, okay? Unless it's like OSL and you're doing like a lightsaber. But even a flame, right, has a spectrum of color in it. It has red, like these dark orangey reds and yellows and things. Okay, so it's a spectrum. So think about it in terms of temperature, like, oh, this is a warm light or a cool light. And then you're able to like modulate the color based on the local color, right? The local color is, what color is this demon? He is red, right? That's the local color. His skin is red. His armor is like a dark greenish teal. His robe is purple or violet, right? Then you can begin to modulate the color based on the local color. So his skin, if we want to make all the highlights more warm, well, the only way to make the red more warm than red is to probably shift into some oranges. And then his skin might, instead of that color, his skin might actually highlight more into a color like this. Make sense? Hope so. It's nice though. I want you to do an exercise. I I want you to paint a model without using too many pastels. I want you to try, if you go to paint green armor, you're allowed to base coat it green, right? Or whatever color. But you're not allowed to use a lighter version of that color to highlight it, right? So if you paint a green, you're not allowed to use a light green. If you paint a blue, you're not allowed to use a light blue. So you have to shift and modulate more. Get a little more experimental with your color usage. Get out of this mindset of just like stepping up, you know, like stepping from this color to this color to this color. Double knife. Some Walter White here. Okay. Not bad. Bad. See if we can find a good picture with some normal lighting. And insert a photo. Okay. Painting with reference is good. So we can see some things here. Like if we look at this, right? What are some big differences that you guys spot? Besides the like contrast and stuff, what are some major... Well, the glasses definitely would help, but... Okay, yeah, beard color is off. Yeah, okay. This is a big one, so flapjack, right? Beard, the wrinkles on the forehead, they're thinner, more a little more sharp, right? So he looks sort of puffy because we're not focusing on like the big shapes, right? Where you're trying to paint too many details, right? Like too many. So let's take some, I'll just grab the color from here because why not, right? So let's start by just blocking in a little more shape, right? Okay, here I can see quite a bit under the eye. Is the eyebrow is quite dark. This side of the head is quite dark. This is all quite dark, right? Where else do I see some shadow that's quite missing? Okay, so I'm darken this a little bit down. Yeah, under this eyebrow. under the nose, around the mouth, from the mustache. Right, the neckline here should be quite shadowed. Okay, under the nose here. The big ones, though, I think is the eyes, right? This eye bag sort of here, right? The eye shape sort of here. Okay, so connecting those eyes, giving him this sort of shadow around the eyes like that, right? And even without the glasses, let me grab a color like this. This is a good one. This sort of middle tone value, right? We can begin to soften this out. This shape's a little bigger. Hey, that's pretty good. So I think one of the big ones is just sort of the eye shape. Defining these like bags under the eyes a little more. Okay. We should be able to already see. Yeah, he has the little bit of this sort of this grayish color, right? Get the hairline in there a little bit. Okay. So defining these sort of general shapes a little bit more. And then we're going to take this and I'm going to take like a medium tone and sort of get rid of these because they're too much at the moment. Like they're not that defined on the original draw on the reference. Okay. So we should be able to see now. And you can see like down here is quite dark, right? Like this is like this sort of grayish tone. So we're focusing more on like the overall shape and values of some of this stuff. Okay. And we can blend this together. And we zoom out. Now if we look before and after, right, we've got some more general shape to the face. And the eyes are much more defined, right? The general eye shape is much more obvious. Okay. Now, yes, the beard is much darker. Trying to highlight the beard too much. Let it be dark, that's fine. All right. So now that we've gotten like these sort of general shapes in, even the eyes themselves, like look at the value, like this is the, other than the white catch light, right? The general value in the eye is like this, dude, this is a like medium tone. Okay. So that means this is way too bright. We need to be like down here. Okay. Yeah, a little more realistic. Okay, then we can put the catch light back in. Yeah, you can put your little dot. All right. So once we've done sort of that, now we could start to do some of these details. And you can see just how thin these details are and how, like, the value of these is not that dark, right? Let's check this value next to this value. This is roughly similar, right? It's a little brighter, so I can go slightly darker, right? But you can see here this color is kind of like a medium tone, right? He's got this sort of shape like this, and then like a nice wrinkle here. Okay, so I'm using these sort of medium ones to define these. And they're quite thin. And he's got this one that sort of goes up his head like so. And kind of across his brow like this. And it sort of blends into these. And just you can see they disappear. They disappear into the shadows as like they cross into the shadow area, right? And it's kind of 3 layers. And they're sort of just lines like that, right? There's not too much to them other than that. Like that's kind of it, right? Then he's got more crow's feet and things around the eyes that you can play with and try and get really detailed. Yes, he has some dots and stuff around his forehead, but ignoring that. Then we can come back with this bright highlight, like this near white highlight. And now we can come back and push that highlight and create that other edge. That defines these shapes even more. Right, you can see this one sort of goes like this, and here. I think his eyebrows are a little thicker too in the reference. No, give him that shine on his forehead. And you can see there's a little more shine in some of these other parts. Particularly here. Right, here, 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 there, right? So let's do that. So push this a little, push this a little. Okay. So with those things, right, you can see just how much more subtle the wrinkles, and then we push those highlights, and now we've got a shape that's much more Walter White, right? So it's like, here, let me duplicate this so we can put it on top and sort of see before and after, right? The eyes is the big one. because the proportions and everything are there. The sculpt is proportioned well. It's just getting that the shadows and everything in the right place to get like the depth to the face that you're kind of missing at the moment, and you're overdoing a few parts, right? Okay, makes sense. And then yeah, probably make his eyebrows a bit more bushy. Not like they're not crazy, but he does have some slightly thicker eyebrows than that, so we can want to get that expression right too. Okay. Muy bien. Muy bien. And hippie. Hi, Eric. Looking for general feedback and points to improve. Thanks a lot for your time and effort. Much appreciated. Bonus question. I know you don't like to talk about specific paints, but I'm curious about your take on heavy body acrylics. I use the Mindwork heavy body acrylics to paint the skin. I like the vibrancy, but they are not particularly easy to work with. But I am still quite the noob in learning. Was wondering if you work with heavy body acrylics like the ones from Mindworks. I have the ones from Mindworks right here. I'm not a huge fan of heavy bodies. I just like a little bit more of a fluid acrylic. I don't think they're bad. They just don't necessarily fit into my workflow very well. I do use them from time to time, but they are not my go-to. I find the people that like thin down heavy body acrylics, I often wonder like why? Like why are you even using heavy bodies if you're just gonna thin them out anyways? Like what's the point? This is quite good. Good like material hierarchy and everything. Nice work there. The fur feels quite soft. Good like metallic representation. Nice dark lining and material separation. I think this is all quite good. Yes, there is some Muscle Islandy things happening here. The sculpt is maybe not doing you favors, or you're overemphasizing it a little too much. I generally would recommend like softening this a little bit. It's a small difference here, but just like applying a sort of glaze across to try and like bring some of this together and not overdo it. Make her stomach a little more smooth, like here. And then you could like take some light, kind of push this up a little bit. Women's abs tend to not be as what's the word I'm looking for? When women get abs like this, they tend to be a little more like washboard than like male bodybuilders, where their muscles tend to be like a little more full, right? So her stomach, I think, could be like a little more, you can be like cut, but it's not like jacked, you know? So you can see the muscle insertions, but you can reduce it a little bit by like making the shadows a little smaller. So like the top part of the main part of the ab is a bit brighter, so that the shadow section of the ab is like a bit more on the lower side, right? Makes it feel a little more cut. Painting on a layer. So you can see the difference here is like pretty subtle, but it makes her stomach feel a little more natural. And then if you want, then you come in with like, you've got some room to push here. You can come in with like a brighter tone, a nice highlight color, and you can then play with some bright tones to create like a bit of sheen to her skin if you want. I like to do a little more highlighting. And this is where you tend to see like a bit more of the shape, is if they're a little shine on the skin tone. Depends on the lighting and stuff, but you know, catch some light on the hip there, some light on this central section of the abdominal. Some light on the thigh, right? Okay. You know what I'll say? Just look at reference of female bodybuilders or whatever, female fitness models, right? Like, if you want to see some examples. But what is a little weird is that like one of the parts of the anatomy that bothers me about this model a little bit is that she has like these 4 defined abs, and then she has like a bit of this defined and the hip muscles, but she doesn't, like, if a woman is going to be like fit enough that you're going to see like these muscles here, they're probably going to be low enough body fat percentage that you'll start to see like the striatus muscles and obliques, right? So, I don't know. It's up to you. I think there's two ways to go with it. You either like reduce it, or you like lean into it and you start to draw some additional musculature on top. Right? So you have to kind of make your decision there. You kind of lower the overall definition. Like here, I would probably then come back and like create some more general form to her stomach. Like so. So I would reduce it all a little bit. And like the difference between this and this. And then you can create the little, some highlights here and highlight here. Right? Yeah, it's up to you. I think the overall painting is quite good. Hello, Eric. Would appreciate any feedback you have on my latest project. This is a vintage rat ogre from Blood Bowl. Oh god. Vintage 40k or Warhammer models. Old Hammer, here we go. My first vintage model, and I tried to make the skin interesting. I used TMM on this model for a bit more pop and old school aesthetic. I could have been a bit cleaner with the execution, not crazy about the rust effect. This is part of my Skaven Blood Bowl team. Spent about 10 hours on this as the showpiece big guy, shooting for tabletop plus display quality. Jeez. Oh my god. Look at that snatched waist, dude. This guy is shaped like a Dorito. Trying real hard to look past the sculpt. All right. Overall, I like the colors in the skin. I think it's quite nice. I think the thing I'm seeing here is just like old metal models and like this is sad little spikes are just a little flaccid. Sorry, getting distracted by goofy ass old Warhammer sculpts. Yeah, I honestly think like the overall I like the colors and stuff in the skin tone. I think there's like a bit of lack of shape here. Like I like the dark tones that you're using, but there's some weirdness going on with certain parts. Like I don't understand what this is. Here, let me switch to a color you can see. Like this, I don't understand. When did I get into Warhammer? End of 4th edition. Early 5th edition. The Battle for Macragge. So the big thing for me is just like, we need some more sharpness on parts. Like you can come back with the skin tone and try and like clean up some of these lines. And taper these out, thin them out. Sure, a bit of this is probably the photography also is not helping very much. But yeah, like you might be going a little too dark with your shadows here. This is an okay color, but if we bring it up just a little bit, like this can work fine for a shadow color. You know, you don't have to go that black on the shadows of the skin tone if you're going for a very pale skin, right? Like this doesn't need to be quite so dark. Because what happens, when you guys push the contrast this much, where you go to like these blacks and stuff in here, you have this area that's like, dude, that's probably like 2 millimeters, right? Or if that. This ab is probably 2 millimeters big. And you're trying to blend from this black to this like pure white in such a small space that you're running out of room, and it looks like you just make this huge color jump, so you have no midtones in there, and everything starts to look like washed out and muddy. Okay, so maybe start a little higher in the values, right? Save the really dark tones, right? Like his palm doesn't need these super dark shadows. It's facing up towards the light, right? And that way you have more room for colors like this, right? These more warm middle values, okay? Does that make sense to you guys? Like why we need that space so that we can better see, like I can better see the shape of his arm and chest now, and where it changes from the belt to the chest and stuff. Right? So no need to go overboard. And here, like on his stomach, like this can be just darker. And I don't need to push all the way up to like this white. I can use some of these sort of middle tones. Save that pure white for like his chest and some parts that are more important. All right. Cool. Readability. Readability is everything. Yeah, you're just pushing the shadows too much in some areas. You're trying to do over contrast. Rhodey, hello there. Eric, it's my first time posting. I'm looking for general feedback. Okay. Very good. I like it. I don't know if the ears would freckle that much, but maybe I'm wrong. I haven't looked too many freckly elves, so I can't say for sure. One thing I like to do here when you have this, I mean, I'm just going to say, yeah, it's nice. Like the cloth and everything looks really good. The skin tones are quite nice. Yeah, it's well executed. The eyes are good. One thing I like to do here is you take a little bit of the scalp color and you can pull that up. When you have a very strong part like this, the hairline will typically have a bit of that scalp showing through like so, and you can pull a little of the scalp in like this. It's gonna make it read a bit more natural. I think her eyelids here could be a little darker. Right, we've got this double eyelid. Lower the value here just a touch. Okay, get the shape around the nose just right. Now the mouth is maybe one of the parts that are not as great. We can get the little, maybe not that much. Okay, you can get the little bit of the dimpling in the corner of the mouth. You can also use highlights to kind of create this shape. You tend to get a little dimpling in the corner of the mouth like so. The lips shape is wrong. It's too sharp here. We want this to not peak so much, make it a little more round. And then it should curve back down towards the corner of the mouth like this. And then this, the lower lip stops before the corner of the mouth, okay? So you have more skin on the side of the mouth, like so. Then you can adjust the shape however pouty you want to make the lips, but here we can see the difference in the mouth shape, right? Now, depending on how much you play with these sort of dimples can change the expression a little bit. If you don't want her as smiley, you can reduce them a touch, but okay. Now, the other thing, I like this highlight here. I like the highlight on the nose. The highlight should go a bit over the freckles. This is a good highlight. This is a good highlight. She's missing, she's got this nice highlight here. Right, I'm going to draw another layer so you guys can see. Highlight. Ugh. I'm going to do it with the red. Right. Highlight, highlight, highlight. There should be one here. There's one on the nose. There's one on the forehead. There's kind of one like here, here, here. Okay. There should be one sort of here. And then there should be one right here. Okay, because the bridge of the nose from the side, right? The profile of her face goes like this. Right, so we have a highlight here, here, and here. There should be one here in the recess also. Okay, and then probably one a bit on her cheek there, right? So we can take this nice bright color, and it's not going to be as intense as the one on the nose, because the one on the nose should be the one on the nose and the lip should be the brightest. So I'm going to give her a little bit more on the lip. Okay. And then I can play with the one on the upper lip just a tiny bit. Then we can give one just here at the bridge of the nose, and then on the side of the nose, the cheeks just a little bit. Right, something like that. Okay. And then the last, I think her hair probably needs another highlight layer too, like something towards the front. Remember, it should be like sort of a bit more front center if you're going for like a central highlight. These need to be pushed a little more towards the middle. You get the idea. Because this feels kind of flat and unfinished. Then, now let's have a little fun. Give her just a bit of coloration, right? So we can play with some reds and give her just a touch of like flushing to the cheeks and stuff. Okay. Very nice piece. Make some small little adjustments. Micro expression is a big thing on faces, right? So it's kind of interesting. We had two nearly back to back. Well, not quite, but between this one, right, where we were talking about how much the eyes matter, right, and here this one, how much the shape of the mouth matters. We made some small adjustment to the eyelids, but how much the shape of the mouth can also change the face and the expression, right? Cool. Makes sense. Guys, good. We've been going for 3.5 hours.